How many times do we want to do something, but we stop? We stop because we have our own doubts. Our doubts are in ourselves, not in anybody else. It happens to us so many times. So now is the time that we need to start learning about who we really are, because that is the only way to really crack the whip and get rid of that doubt that we have in ourselves. Hi, my name is Glenda Kroll, and welcome to Let's Get Real. Another day, another Wednesday to get real and find out really how we are. And my side buddy here is.
I'm Nicole Harvick, and I'm always so glad to be here on Wednesday because, in my opinion, my humble opinion, we bring some amazing guests on here, and we bring some guests on here that point out ways to start figuring out who you are, ways to help you understand who you are or might be becoming. Because one of the things in life is we continue to morph. We don't stay the same person, or we shouldn't stay the same person, because many things change. So we are going to talk about that today, and I'm just super excited because we have an amazing guest today. And this lady that's going to be joining us she's a healer, she's a seer, a podcaster, a speaker, and a coach. So she encompasses a lot of things that we are, or maybe that we want to be. She is a visionary dedicated to awakening the heroic spirit of women and men, creating leaders and shapers of positive change for our world. And so, Glenda, it looks like she's here. Did you want to bring her up?
Absolutely. Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
How are you? Welcome.
Hello, dear women. I missed the introduction because my internet was working kind of wonky, but I believe you did a great job. It's nice meeting you today here. Everybody has such a nice background. I have Costa Rica right behind me. You can't see it, but it's beautiful. How are you doing today?
Good, and you have the real Costa Rica behind you. I kind of have the wannabe Costa Rica behind me, but I have traveled to Costa Rica. Glenda has some amazing stories from there also, and that really was one of my most amazing vacations, because when you and I spoke, Carolina, I told you that that's the first time I ever saw plants vibrate.
Oh,
I
yes.
always thought the wind would pick them up and blow them around, but there was no breeze, and they were vibrating. So that was very, very interesting. And Glenda, tell her your story. Your story was crazy.
Yes, well, Costa Rica has a lot of memories. I've been there multiple times, and the one memory that I am so grateful that I'm here to tell it is I went over a cliff in the rainforest on an ATV and went sailing over and dropped down. I don't even know how many feet into the canyon. And
wow.
the fact, yes, and as the machine was going over and turning over, and I went down and the machine went down on top of me, I had this voice screaming out at me to jump up. And it was that voice that carried me, and I did jump up. I managed to have superpowers that pulled me out. I don't know how. The cool thing is we don't know how about a lot of these things, right? And I got up and I kept on going, and then the machine went tumbling all the way down to the end and crashed into pieces. So that voice that was screaming out with me saved my life. And
that is incredible.
Yeah. So Costa Rica, as soon as I hear that word, that's what comes back into my mind of saying, wow.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, our stories are pretty different, Glenda. Vibrating leaves and death, it's like a little bit.
It seems that there was a lot of the divine in both of these moments.
Absolutely.
Well, I believe in the divine because the divine in most of my life has carried me through. I have other huge stories that I've also been through, and it was the divine that led me to getting through some very, very difficult times. And again, another time where my life was in jeopardy. I don't know why it keeps on coming back, but it's obviously not meant to happen so soon. So I'm here live and good. And so I'm grateful
God
for all these
bless.
beautiful things. Yes.
Absolutely. You're like that cat with 9 lives. I think you've maybe used 3 or 4, so we've got a few left for
Yeah,
you. But you know,
absolutely. So,
Carol,
Caroline, I've read through about you. I was excited. I see that you are also a Toronto girl. And,
Yes.
and
I've been
yes,
for multiple years.
okay. Well, once you come back from Costa Rica, we definitely have to meet up because
Oh,
I
we sure will.
am. I'm a Toronto girl too, and some really pretty cool things come with us Toronto girls. But I love the fact that first of all, your work on very much into. Well, we talked about the divine and the things that come, and you're an incredible leader. And I want to know how it all really began because, when you find that you have those powers within you or somebody is talking to you, and I know for me, because I have it too, but it's usually starts somewhere where we don't always listen to that voice that guides us. And there's something that sort of tells us about things. But so, tell us a little bit. How did this all start?
So, I at this point in my life, I know that my talents has been following me since my very birth because I've done some deep dive into researching where my family comes from, uh, who I am by my lineage. But it all started in a very young age. I was at the age of 5 when I realized that I will die someday. Because I was able to observe nature in such a delicate way where I was one with it when I played with it. I was so in tune with it that I could hear the spirits in the trees. I could hear voices in the breeze. I could sense the colors of the oranges that were growing in the grove around our house. And I also felt people on a um, very deep level. I could read the energy in the room. I could see when people were upset or immensely happy or whatever there was they were going through. And so it happened that I lived a very diverse life. My dad, he's a very strong, powerful shaman. He's a leader in his community. Wherever he went in the world, he always made the community around him better. He always worked to really uplift and raise the people around him. But my mother, she was a very different person. She was abusive. She went through a lot of suffering herself. And so it happened that the both of them moved us to the Middle East. And as you know, the Middle East is in a perpetual state of war all the time. Unfortunately, a lot of innocents suffer on all ends. And so it happened that I just grew up watching suffering both in my family and in my country. I saw, on one hand, how humanity is trying to break through the conditioning and the programming and everything that's going on. And on the other hand, um, I saw just the immense suffering that is being caused to us by the matrix itself, by the governments, by the people who are supposed to lead us into a better tomorrow, into a better future, people that we should trust with our lives, basically.
Yeah.
So this is how it started for me. I really sensed everything on a deep level. I was also chosen in my life's journey into multiple leadership roles. If it was in my time working for the TV and cinema industry, where I led amazing, beautiful projects, but at that time was when my eyes literally opened to how propaganda works, uh, who is your friend and who isn't,
Yeah.
and what really is important. And this is where my own mission came to fruition because I realized that my mission is to reclaim our divine human particle that is being forgotten through this programming and conditioning, and to help raise the next generation of fearless and authentic leaders, because I think this is what we're most craving in this world. All of us are so scattered in the wind. All of us are waiting for the hero to save us. And I feel that the hero lives within us. It's within
Absolutely.
us, and it's a new dawn where there is an awakening where we can make that happen for ourselves. And through that, God bless it, will come the hero that we all are waiting for.
And it's usually in the darkest hours when things come out that you see the heroes aren't anybody but the ordinary. And that's the most, actually, I look at it as the most touching moments, is when you see somebody that just knows that it's their time to do what is needed to be done.
Yes.
And you see it um, a lot too often, especially in what's going on and all over the world today. So I love that. And how do you find that you pull out the leadership from people?
I mean, I have a way to have a conversation with a person and holding space for them to really unravel in their truest colors without feeling judged. I see people for who they are, and I allow them to space, um, to really show up for it and own for it, whether it's your dark parts or your light parts. We're all human beings. We all have our stories. We all sinned. We've all been through something. We all suffered. It is just part of this journey we're on, and I feel that most of us are so scared being who we are because we do not accept a part of ourselves that are defined as bad, as naughty, as not good enough. And again, it all comes down to conditioning and programming, right? Since a very young age, we're being told, shut up, don't speak your mind, don't express your feelings, you got to be this and that. We're molded to be somebody, some kind of part of society that serves some kind of purpose, but in that process we lose our own divine particle, the thing that makes us special. And we get lost in that. We get lost in the expectations of society around us. And I think that I was lucky enough to develop this um, ability to hold the space for people to show them that it's okay to be who they are. It's okay to show in their pain, in their suffering, to talk about their mistakes, to really look into the parts of themselves that they're not proud of, so they can start changing. They can start their transformation process. I like talking about it as the remembrance process, because what I do is I don't teach anybody anything new. I don't know better than anybody else how to live their lives. Nobody does. The truth, the divine truth, is the truth that we have inside of us. It comes from within. And what happens is that we sort of live in this cluttered house, that is being trashed by all this programming and conditioning and stored trauma that we have within ourselves, that we don't see. We don't have the clarity to see where it is that is causing us suffering, where it is that we're betraying ourselves on a daily basis. So it's basically a process of remembrance. You remember who you are, where you come from, and you go back home to the most sacred of places, which is your heart. Nicole calls the heart as the truth center, and it is what it is,
Yeah.
because you go back home and you have this option to look at things as they are, look at the truth of things authentically, without fear, without feeling judged, and see where it is that you have all the unnecessary boxes you've been storing, where's the spider webs you need to clean, and you start this process with the awareness and the complete integration of everything that makes you, which
And
is
I understand that. And I also believe that there's a lot of times where it's those dark moments that actually shed a lot of light onto us as well.
yes.
Absolutely. You have to know the darkness to know the light. It's the planet of duality. So you have to acknowledge, accept, and bring in both. And I think that's when we really, as a human, we really start becoming who we are meant to be. That it also brings us this vulnerability, that we're finally brave enough to speak our truth. And when
Yes.
you do that, when you speak your own truth, you can be the ripple for others, because you're normalizing something that not a lot of people do. You're normalizing that we all have a different truth, but let's respect each other. Let's honor them by letting them speak their truth just as I spoke mine. And when I learned to do that, I had people coming to me that maybe wouldn't have done this before, because I was open, I was vulnerable. And then they realized, oh gosh, she's maybe someone very different than who we thought. So let's start a conversation. And I love that part of it is that vibration that finally matches with others.
Precisely, because that conversation is what creates the ripple effect within society, because it is normal to be human. It is normal to feel, to express, to go through troubles and tribulations. And Glenda, you asked me how it all started for me. You know, I've been in leadership roles and I showed up for my teams. I showed up for the people I was leading. I was a producer. I was a leader of great projects. I sometimes led teams of hundreds of people, you know, and I had to show up in my most resourceful state, strong, standing my ground. I know everything. I know where to go, what to do. I was the beacon of light. I was the person with the with with the you know, the strongest spirit on set. But I would go back home and I would crumble into myself. I would collapse by the anxiety and the depression because the walls would literally speak to me. I was so lost in my own suffering and in my confusion of why the world is as it is, you know. And it all happened to me because I lived this dual life where I had to show up, but I couldn't talk about my troubles. I couldn't show that I was struggling. I couldn't show people that I had some problems to figure out within myself, you know? So I've been hiding and running away from myself for so many years until I lost everything. And I found myself on the very bottom where there was nobody else to blame. There was nothing else to run from. It was just me in the pitch dark, and I had to figure my way out of it. And I learned to just switch my mindset from suffering from my loneliness to being happy in my solitude, because I learned to know myself better, because I became my best friend and I returned into my most resourceful state. And through that, I was able to build empires, not only for myself, but the people around me, people who started coming into my life, the people that I started working with through my power this time. And this is where life started changing, where I realized I had the awareness of what it was that was hindering my process, what it was that was causing me pain.
Okay, but at that point, it's not just knowing the awareness. It's also that, and I understand exactly what you're saying, because my my life kind of very much resembles what you're saying as well. So I get this, but it's not just the awareness. You know, there's a lot of questions that we have to ourselves as when we
Yes.
were born, of how we are parented, the reactions of what, you know, a lot of times our parents, especially now, it's a different type of form of parenting. You know, we now grow up in a world where, you know, to educate yourself is so easy. There's so much around us. But when I was, you know, growing up, I'm a lot older than you, but when I was growing up, parents didn't have these type of things to understand. They just parented from where they were coming from. So if they themselves were broken, and in most cases, this is, you know, this is what my story was. And in most cases, when a parent is broken, they don't even know they were broken. They didn't have this awareness of
Precisely.
what we talk about today. So they just, you know, whatever they were shown, they just resembled the same thing. So the pattern kept on going. It's only in this now, in this society, and for myself, because the same thing. I asked a lot of questions, and I don't even know where they came from, these questions that went on as a little child. But there were always things in my head that I thought of where people were astonished that I would even come up with these things, because there was something always inside of me that always needed to know, where I always looked around and really was watching. You know, always watched what people were doing, how they were saying, talking and all the rest of it, and became to where I started to educate myself more. So when you talk about, you were brought up, I'm presuming, as your parents did what they were taught and came up, and then this young, beautiful woman or child starts up, and then you take on until something doesn't feel right.
That
We're
is right.
not, we don't come into awareness. Now, you tell me if I'm wrong. And we don't come into awareness until we started having those feelings, or those that something isn't right. It's when we start to hit down that something doesn't feel good, something doesn't jive, something that the mind is not resting, is when you start to become aware.
But
Yes.
I want to point out, and I was going to ask her about this, because you said you were aware of death at age 5. And that's really, really young. And that wasn't even something I even thought about or knew about at age 5. I hadn't dealt with it. But you'd also talk about your dad being a shaman. So you came into a different type of mentality in terms of spiritually versus just doing what everyone else was doing, and parroting with, how we parent. So tell me about how you came to realize about death at age 5. And as you look at society now, how would you say you grew up different, having a very aware father spiritually and an abusive mother, because that doesn't really merge together,
That is the duality of my story. Every time I tell it to
Wow.
people, they're like, "How did that happen to you?
Yeah.
How is that possible?" Where I'm going to answer the first question of how I came to understand death. It was just by observing nature. It was
Mhm.
by observing nature, by observing the. I was um, such a I don't want to call it a special child. I think a lot of children enjoy their time in nature, but I could spend hours outside just playing with the leaves and the trees, and just and enjoying the conversation I had with these forces. I didn't realize it back then that I'm actually having conversations with actual entities that lived in the forest. I only understood it later by speaking with my father, and I was lucky enough to have this man raise me, because he created the space for me. He was the first person in my life that created the space for me to really express myself, so I don't feel like I'm losing my mind as I did when these talents of mine became even sharper. It all started booming in my life when I became a woman at the age of 14. But being younger, it's just a sense that I had growing with my dad. My biggest fear was, when I'll die, I won't find my dad in the big universe. It wasn't even a fear of death. It was just the understanding that one day this cycle will come to an end, and I might be lost in the big, big, wide universe, and I won't have anybody around me. Um, but yeah, this man really pampered me towards being a leader. I think that most men, they expect to have a firstborn boy, but then he received a girl. I was so small and fragile, and a Pisces on top of everything. I was really a sensitive child, and it never stopped my dad from raising me as a fighter, raising me as a leader, raising me fierce and resilient and strong. He taught me how to speak with people, how to hold spaces for them, how to see them in a whole different way. And he's my own personal Nostradamus. He's so aware. Like 20 years ago, I remember a conversation with him where he just sat us down, sat the entire family down, and told us, okay, this is how the next 20 years are going to play out. And everything happened exactly as he anticipated. So this was my luck to grow up with him and learn so much about him, to have the awareness towards life. But it took my own life experience to tap into everything he taught me, because some of it I didn't accept at the time, some of it I didn't understand, some of it I was fighting myself. So through my own experience, I realized what life was and what is my purpose in it. How am I here to serve humanity, to serve the world around me. And I started utilizing on my own talents because of my ability to have different conversations with people on a deeper level, and having unlocked.
Uh-oh,
Oh, seems like I lost you.
you
Are
did
we
just
back?
Just
yeah,
frozen.
you're back. I can hear you now. You said you had conversation with others, is where you kind of cut out. Oh
Oh,
no.
and she's
Yeah.
cut out.
Well, I hope she comes back because I want to hear some more of this. But she brings up some good points, because some of us come with knowledge. It's not learned from other people. We come with knowledge. Do you
And
feel like,
I understand that, and I
yeah,
agree with you. That's why I say when, sometimes like I had it as a child,
yeah,
don't know where things came from me. It was, asking, like I always had the question, why was I born? As a little child, I could never understand why I was born. And, later in life, my purpose came to me, many of things, but yeah, it's the growing of, I think that we're all born with certain things in us, and it's up to us to bring that out. And by asking the questions, by you having a father who was that spiritual, and seeing things in a different light, it was a very different background than the average child would have. So how is your dad, first of all, still alive? And
Oh yes. Oh
yeah.
yes. And the one thing that popped into mind when you guys were speaking is that he always spoke to me on an eye level, you know? I was a young child, but he would explain and teach the world to me as it was. He never lied. He
Nice.
never tried to overprotect me. And that really helped me to grow up different, let's say, because I was led to be an authentic as I can be. Um, so yeah, I think that played a big part. And I think that what you guys are talking about with the questions that we're born with, I feel like this is precisely what I'm talking about. This is the divine element within us. This is the ancient wisdom that is floating in our veins. This is what makes our DNA. This is the particle of God that
yeah,
literally is there to answer all the questions we have. That's why it's so important to raise this inner awareness, go inward, so we learn to tune into that voice. But it's already inside. Nobody can unlock it for us if we're not ready to listen.
absolutely, absolutely. It's pretty incredible what you're talking about. And you even mentioned your dad had predicted those 20
And
years.
we're
Now,
back. Sorry,
yeah.
my internet keeps on coming
Okay.
and going.
Oh no. Did your dad channel
Did I miss
Nostradamus?
anything?
I had a question about your dad. Can you hear me?
Yes,
When you
yes.
said he knew about what was coming in the next 20 years, and did he know that from his source, or did he channel Nostradamus?
No, I think I don't want to talk about channeling when it comes to my dad, because we never really talked about channeling, so I don't want to put words in his mouth. He was just he's such an aware man. He's the most
Mhm.
intelligent man I know. Like, I have to admit. I think he just anticipated it
Okay.
by watching and and listening
By
to the
that inner
tunes of the
knowledge.
world,
Yeah,
so he was able to really kind of calculate everything that is going to happen. And of course, it's all based on history. It's not like we're living something new. We're having the same thing packaged differently, to
differently.
be
Yeah.
honest.
And you've always
And
heard history
they
repeats
added
itself.
some new spices into it, like I like saying.
But it's true. Life is a circle, and we
Mhm.
just everything in life goes around in a circle. And
Yeah, society is repeating the same patterns all over again.
yeah,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
when you think that things can't happen, they actually are happening. So, as we're growing and we're evolving. Unfortunately, we're also going backwards too. And and that's where I'm hoping that more people with a bright light can be able to stand up and lead, so that we can be the human beings we're supposed to be, the love, the light,
Yeah.
instead of having the anger and the hatred. And you know what? I think when you were telling about your dad, there's one very important characteristic that most people don't have in our world today, and that is the factor of being able to listen. And it's a talent, because most people, when we're in a conversation, have halfway through the conversation, they've already tuned out of what you're going to say. They're already thinking of their rebuttal before it even happens. So I think wisdom really comes from people who are really good listeners to begin with.
Yeah, and that
Yes,
that
that
is
is
somewhat of a
true.
lost art, somewhat of a lost art. But I love you talking about ancient wisdom also, because the wisdom of our ancestors that can just go back thousands and thousands of years, that, and you're there in Costa Rica in nature, where it all comes from, where it all starts. So how would you encourage someone to be one with nature, or to understand that you can learn, you can hear, and you can start feeling and becoming one with nature if you want to? Oh, I think we lost her again. And I won't be able to remember my question, Glenda.
Yeah, we just lost her. It's
Mhm.
really tricky when you're talking. I remember doing a few years ago, of doing an interview with, actually it was Forbes, and she was in Costa Rica, and we kept losing her. So welcome back.
Sorry,
Hi.
Nicole, could you repeat your question?
Yeah, one of the things I said is that how would you talk about or teach people to become one with nature? Because we're so abusive of nature, of Mother Nature, and if we learn that there are many answers within her, within our plants, within our soil, within Gaia, the Mother, Pachamama,
I
whatever you want
think,
to call her, how would
oh
you
gosh, I hope that
encourage?
you can hear me.
Yes.
I hope that you can hear me. But I think that before we have the conversation of how to connect with nature, we should have the conversation on how to connect with ourselves, because we are not connected to our own selves. We're so far away from what is called home that this is the conversation we should be asking, we should be having. Because what happens to us is that I feel like this is the biggest ailment in society nowadays. We live in a perpetual self lie. We're betraying ourselves on a daily basis. We live a life that is there to appease somebody else, uh, to please somebody else, to be a good girl or a good boy, because we're not in peace with who we are. And this is what we started this conversation with, of reconnecting to that divine particle, right? To our uniqueness. And it all comes down to the integration of all the parts of us. Nicole, we had such a great conversation about it before, accepting our ego, integrating our ego back. Now, the ego is a big conversation. Everybody talks about the ego from a different aspect, but what I like to talk about is the ego being this reflection of the child that we are. It's the part of ourselves that needs the most nurturing and the most attention and listening to, because it is that hurt child who was put into a mold, who was restricted, who wasn't able to express themselves when they were younger. This is the child that still grieves for how it hurt mommy and daddy while he was playing and being naughty and being too loud, and all these times in our childhood where we weren't accepted, we weren't loved. We still remember these times. They're still in our veins. They're still in our DNA. This is the stored trauma we have within us. This is where our ego, the thing that makes us so unique and protects us, is suffering. This is where we lack on the peace that we should experience within ourselves, because we're living this duality of trying to be somebody good for somebody else, but we're lost within ourselves, and we betray ourselves on the
A
most,
lot.
a lot
A
daily.
lot.
Every time we say yes, but we mean no. Every
Right.
time we say no and we mean yes. Every time we ignore this inner feeling that kind of twists our insides, and we still do whatever we don't want to be doing. This is a self betrayal. And it always comes with a punishment, it always has consequences.
Always.
And in the sort of our own suffering through it. But we
Yeah.
convince ourselves that this is how we should be. This is how life is. I need to be for others. I need to be this. I need to be that. No, what you need to be is to be you. Is to
Right.
be you.
And
to
accept the other yous as well, because
precise,
each you is different. We're all different,
precisely.
and we put away the judgment when we
Oh,
release the ego, and all of a sudden you don't want to judge. Maybe you don't resonate with them, maybe you do, but you let go of that judgment, and that just creates so much more of love within yourself when you don't judge,
yes.
you know
Yes.
bringing you back around to you again, because you don't feel the need to judge someone, because you know what being judged feels like.
Precisely. And we
And
judge ourselves constantly. I
All
think
the time.
everybody feels that.
and that's a huge thing, right? We all judge ourselves too much. We all judge ourselves that we ended up with this self-doubt in ourselves, where we can't stand up to what we believe in because we're really afraid of what others will say, what others will think. And maybe then
Yes.
we don't fit into the mold that we think that society has made for us.
Because we're all scared not to be accepted, not to be loved. Listen, what we want is so basic. All of us, we want safety, we want security, to have our basic needs met, connection and relationship. This is what brings peace. This is what brings happiness, the well-being. A healthy society that perpetuates growth is created by a healthy individual.
Yeah.
Healthy individuals. That's why my mission is to help individuals go back to the most resourceful state. And what is our most resourceful state? It literally refers to the process of returning to a state of optimal mental, emotional, and physical well-being. That is why I love holistic healing so much, because it really covers all aspects. This is where people get better equipped to handle the challenges they're facing in life, to make effective decisions, to perform at their best, but we can't do that while we're still struggling with that inner judge, with not knowing who we are, with not accepting the troubles that we have in our life, without seeing what it is causing us suffering, without asking ourselves some important questions. And that requires a lot of courage. That is not a process that everybody is willing to go through. And that's why we see a society that is somewhat asleep, you know, because
Somewhat.
people are just taking it. People are just living this reality without giving themselves the opportunity to break free from that constant state of suffering, you know?
And we're willing to give up our self-love right now to appease someone else, or to make them happy, or
Precisely.
to make them like us.
Precisely. But how longer are you going to keep doing that? You
Yeah,
know, you
right.
cannot fight the tide. There are going to be people who like you, there are going to be people who don't, and there are going to be people who don't give a damn about what you're doing in your life, you know?
Very
And it's your decision if you want to lay on the bed on your last days and feel like you've done something meaningful and you've lived life as you wanted to, or you're going to just die with regrets in your hands, which is just hurting my heart,
Yeah.
because so many of us go that way. And
Too
It
many.
is what it
Yeah.
is. I'm just happy that we're experiencing this amazing awakening in the world. I see more and more people who are willing to dive inward, to challenge themselves, to find the courage within themselves to embark on the hero's journey. Like I love the hero's journey. When you get to rediscover yourself truly, fully, you get to meet your demons, you get to slay the dragons, and you go back home in peace. You realize who you are. You've made this beautiful, wonderful circle. But I don't know why people won't choose that. I mean, we only live once. Maybe it's my adventurous spirit, but I'm so adamant on this process. I want to experience that.
I
Yeah.
think it's the fear that it's more than anything else, because to be true to your own self is the ultimate in life. To speak your own truth, to do what you feel is the right thing. We do know right from wrong for ourselves anyways, but it's also the fear of whether it's belonging, to being. And some people just rather not, and in their own consciousness they would rather um, be someone who they aren't than to what we would call become risky and
Oh
be
yeah.
courageous and stand up.
That's
Yeah.
that's the one thing, fear. Thank you so much for saying
Sure.
that, Glenda, because I don't know the exact definition to courage, but I think it's not the lack of fear. It's the resilience to overstep that monster, that shadow that is literally in our head, because we can only fear our past that is still, we're still dragging behind us like a big sack of rocks,
You
or we
got it.
can fear the future because it is the unknown. But through observing nature, okay, and this is something I love speaking about, because fear, it's like a passion of mine to show people that fear is just an illusion, because once you overstep the fear, you open the door that has this big title of fear on it, you experience a whole new world, and you're like, really, I was scared of all of this, it was just in my head. But just observe nature. Let's take a tiger in the jungle who hasn't eaten for 2 months. Okay? You think he's walking the jungle fearful that he might die? You think that his thoughts, his inner wisdom, his ancient wisdom, that makes a tiger, you think he's walking around, his skin is already pulled on his beautiful big bones, and all he thinks about is, oh my god, where am I gonna get my next meal? What is gonna happen to me? I hate this forest. I hate paying rent for the trees I'm at. Like all these thoughts in his head. No, he's not stressing. He knows he's a tiger. He knows he has what it needs to hunt for that prey wherever it shows up in his eyesight. A different example I have, which might be even better. It's from a video I recently watched, and I love going back to it. It's two guys who have these uh, little reels with so much simple wisdom about life. So there are two guys meeting on a beach, and there's an anemone anemone on the shore, and the sea's away. There's how do you say it, low tide.
Mhm.
And the anemone is there on the rocks, and the guy wants to move it closer to the sea, because he doesn't want it to die and to suffocate without the sea. He's like scared for the anemone, and his friends tells him, keep it here, it should be here. That's his place. That's his home. It belongs here. And the other guy goes like, but what if the sea never comes? What if it dies? And it's like, it knows. It knows the sea will come. Don't worry. Because the sea anemone being on that rock has the knowing within itself, the knowing that floats in his veins, that the sea is coming. Nutrition is coming. Life is coming. And this is the knowing that we're lacking. And it is inside us. That is the process of surrendering. That is the
Yes.
process of trusting the universe. This is the unconditional love everybody speaks of. This is it.
Absolutely.
You can find it in that anemone waiting for the sea to come back. It's on the shore, on the rocks, knowing love is here. Nutrition is here. I'm being taken care of. I'm in good hands. I have nothing to fear. It's not there stressing out like,
Yeah,
fearful. Oh, the sea will never come, It has the divine knowing. And this is why I'm here to awaken this divine knowing. And it's through the process of releasing our past trauma, releasing everything that hold us, breaking through the conditioning and programming that tells us you can't, you won't, you shouldn't. This is bad, you're bad, you're not worthy. I want to get us back to the knowing that we're divine. The universe is here for us. We're provided. I personally do not believe that we're going to die because there's a lack of food on our planet. Okay?
Yeah,
I do not believe that. I think we have everything we need. Everything.
I agree with you.
we always have.
Yeah. And we
Yeah.
always will, as long as you know within yourself. But it's just like, and I love the analogies, especially going back to the tiger, because, for myself, when I ever feel at a time when my life is in jeopardy or something is happening, I actually bring myself back into a position of an animal. And the tiger is one of them because of that strength, that power. That is where I'd rather shift my mind to, because knowing that you can get through no matter what it is, even though that whether you don't believe the universe, and I'm of the believing of everything always works out no matter what. But when you can transition yourself in your mind into being like the animal, that strength, that wisdom, being so in tune to the sounds, to the smells, and all the rest of it, it really gives you that power to keep on going and not to give up, because that's what happens in a lot of people today is they give up because life is tough. And when it's tough because we haven't learned it all, and we're never going to learn it all. That's what life is all about, is to continue us growing and
Yes.
becoming more, and to maybe, so for I am walking through that, I can take the hand of somebody who is behind me so I can bring them forward. And that's what the power of it is. But your analogy
Precisely.
of the animal is dead on.
And I hope that this answers your question from before, Nicole. Our connection with
Mhm.
nature, just by observing these processes. This is what it is. We have so much to learn. When I was in the pit bottom, I asked myself, my family's totem is a wolf. Like Biryuk, a part of my
Mhm.
family name, Biryuk is an old Slavic name. It literally means lone wolf. And it belonged to the sages of the forest. These were people who would leave society and go deep into the woods, and people would come to them to get some healing, to get back to the resource. And I asked myself, really, what kind of wolf am I if I'm just going to lie around and wait for my death? It
Yeah,
is not what wolves do,
yeah.
So just by observing, I feel that nature doesn't have fear in it. It
Mm-mm.
has it has courage and it has calculation. I don't think that the animals in the forest, they're fearing of the lion. They know that there is a lion. They know where to keep their distance, you know? So
Absolutely.
I
And
think that fear is human made. It's
it
human made and
is.
human induced.
And we absolutely create so much of our own fear. And
Yeah.
and when you do go into nature, and even if you just look at the sacred geometry of everything,
Oh, yeah.
nature is a miracle. You just know it, and it's here to heal us if we let it. If we let it.
Yes,
When people say hug a tree, and they used to laugh about it, and it's like, no, seriously, hug a tree.
that is
But
so true.
yeah,
That is so
trees
true.
move around, trees, speak to one another, and all of nature does that if you pay attention.
Yes, it is true. I
Yeah.
agree.
And the ease of just sitting in Mother Nature and watching a bird fly around from, and eating its food and just moving around. When you start watching all that, you realize that there's more, that we're all part of that whole system.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know that this is the historical reason why so many sages and people in leadership roles, kings, you know, famous leaders and fighters, they used to leave society and go deep into the woods, disappear for a while, you know, reconnect with something ancient and wise, because nature, it allows us to reconnect to that divine particle, to really restore our resource. It all comes down to mindfulness, to meditating upon one's state of mind, to gain that clarity needed away from all the voices,
Yes.
away
Yeah.
from the programming and conditioning of society, because we are a fearful society. We need to understand that fear also is a protective mechanism. We have it for a reason, you know? But there is a way to work around it and with it. There is a way to make fear your biggest ally. So you can look into his eyes and through it to see what it is trying to teach you, what it is trying to prevent you, where it is leading you, and what awaits on the other side. And when you switch your mindset around it, it's kind of fun to be working with fear.
Yeah.
Honestly. I mean, I've reached the state where every time I get baffled or fearful or anxious about anything, I have this, okay, let's go back home to my sacred abode, to my divine place of being, you know, to my realm, my inner realm, and let's look at it. And I start playing with it, you know, like a Rubik cube. I observe it. I ask the fear, where have you come from? What are you here to teach me? What is it that you want? Okay. And through that conversation, it paves the way for me. It tells me who I am, what I need to know, and where I need to go. And it becomes a completely different voice in your head.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, you will sit back and listen to that voice. The problem is a lot of people aren't listening to those voices. There's a lot of chatter going on around,
Oh, yeah.
but we need to stop and we need to get quiet. And people can't seem to do that today.
No.
We're so busy drowning ourselves out with with having, well, first of all, social media, the phone that
Oh,
never
yeah.
gets down, that, you know, between the phone, the TV, we're so used to going that we don't have time to just sit and listen, to hear somebody who is telling us. And I know because I've heard those voices in myself that has guided me time and time again. So what do you say to someone who can't seem to hear that voice or is asking about, you know, that, is this real? Is there such thing that can guide you and lead you? What do you say to those non-believers?
Well, I don't like convincing the non believers, to be honest. There's always a tipping point, there's always a choice.
Right.
There's always a choice if you want to live in a perpetual state of fear and anxiety and suffering and just people pleasing and be just a random part of society and not doing anything meaningful and just, you know, breathing your last breath still in your suffering, realizing that you've lived a life of just mistakes with a spouse you never liked, you've never done anything you liked. But there is a tipping point, you know. So there comes a moment, whether it's the dark night of the soul or something happens in your life, when you decide, okay, there are so many voices in my mind, there's so much clutter, I need to do something about it. And you can do it alone, like I did, unfortunately, or you can do it with guidance. And God bless it. There's so many beautiful, wonderful guides out there. People who have
Yes.
been through so much pain and suffering and turmoil, who can show you that it's okay. You could survive this. You know, the program that tells you I'm going to die, it's just
Yeah,
in your mind. You
that's right.
know, I'm going to die if I make this choice. I'm going to die if I make this change. What people are going to tell about me? What's going to be my legacy, blah blah. Every fear we have, there's a counterpart. There's somebody that can lead us inward to see our inner truth, what it is the spirit wants, what it is the soul wants. And what it wants is completely different from what society is telling you what is right or wrong. Okay, this is your truth. So, you know, you could There's so many modalities. There's just so much to do. There are healing frequencies. There's all sorts of therapy. There's meditation,
Mhm.
meditation, breath work. I personally love breath work.
Yeah.
Breath
It's
work has changed my life. It
mhm.
has saved my life multiple times. It literally pulled me out of severe depression in such a quick manner, quick to the point, focused right there. I didn't need to explain to anybody what I was going through. It was just breathing. And breathing is so simple. We
Oh,
all have it. We don't even need anybody to guide us, and it's so accessible. We live in a world where knowledge is so accessible to you. It's just a matter of choice.
yeah.
When is it you're going to wake up? How many years are you going to spend inside your suffering? And if you chose to wake up and follow your heart to kind of, you know, change the channel of this inner radio we have in our mind, appease the judge, the inner judge, the clutter, the anxiety, there is a way to work with it. I work with shamanic healing modalities. I do some profound spiritual work. I create sacred spaces for people. We do some awesome ceremonies. People go through profound processes in a very short time. But there are so many modalities out there. Hypnotherapy is a great one that is now on the rise. I'm so happy that people are doing
Yes.
therapy nowadays. So powerful, so powerful. It's healing PTSD
Yeah.
easily, so quickly. Like, I've had a conversation with a US veteran yesterday, and he told me that the VA doesn't have hypnotherapy. What
Wow.
is up with that?
And
Why
that
are
can
we
be
not
so
healing better?
quick. Yeah. That can be so quick to utilize and
Precise.
pull out, you know. No, it's amazing what we can do now and without synthetic drugs.
Precisely. So, Glenda, I'm personally not here to convince the non-believers. If you had enough of the clutter and the anxiety and the demons roaming in your head, and you feel like it's your time to take control, you have all the tools you need. And if
Well,
you're
it's about
confused
making a
about the
decision of
process,
how much, uh, either whether it's anger, sadness, how much of that you're going to allow in your life. When is it enough?
precisely.
And it's not that I'm looking to convince. It's just that what, there are so many things out there, and that's what I want to
Yeah.
make it, that we need to know that there's so many different tools, so many different ways that we can
Yes.
change, and become a lot lighter and get rid of the heaviness that is maybe surrounding you in your own world. World
Precisely.
doesn't need to be black.
I just know that without the decision of the other person, it's gonna be futile. It's not gonna work. The person itself needs to decide that they're ready, that they want to do something about their lives.
Well,
That is
that's
key.
that is the key to life, isn't that right?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
much do we need to accept? Well, unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our session, and I know it just seems like we just got on, and we could go into another whole session all over this, Carolina.
Oh,
You
there's so
just,
much to talk about.
I know, it's not enough, but you are a beautiful white lighting soul, and I want to thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining us and giving so much out there to so many people that need a little bit of light shined in their
Mhm.
own space. And that's really what it's about, right? Following your heart and shedding some more
Yes.
love around. And
Yes. Thank you so much for creating this space for people to come and talk about their life journeys. I really appreciate it. Thank you both.
Oh, you're
as I
welcome.
appreciate you. Nicole, would you like to share with us your thoughts?
There's so many good points in this conversation today. And even if you're not familiar with some of this terminology, the things we're talking about are incredibly easy because they've been given to us through higher source, through higher power. And that's my opinion. But you know, one of the things I always tell people, if you can control your breath, you can control anything. If you go outside into nature, that is meant to heal you. You know, it's some things we just overcomplicate, and they don't need to be. So simple, so simple. And you know, the fear you create your own fear. You know,
Precisely.
you can get rid of that as well. So I would, you know, the best thing that has been said today is go inside to your sanctuary, go inside to your ancient wisdom, go inside to your knowledge, and go inside to where truth starts.
Yes. Thank you so much, Nicole. That was on point.
Yeah.
Well, and then most importantly, though, I think one of the biggest things that was just mentioned as well, that one of the most important things is to just breathe.
Breathe.
We allow ourselves to just take in more.
Simplify.
That's it.
Simplify. Simplify. It is so simple. Healing is simple. It's just been sold to us like this difficult process that should take 20 years in therapy. It's
Mhm.
simple.
It is.
So if you're looking that you want to contact Carolina, her link is below the video. And it is any time that you feel that life is just becoming overwhelming, stop. Close off all of those things that are attracting noise and just be with yourself.
Precisely. And there's a free meditation on my website that people can download that really brings them back to their center and unlocks the heroic spirit within. It's available for immediate download. You're not getting into any newsletter list, so you can just go and have it for yourself. It's been proven to work.
Good.
Beautiful.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much,
much.
ladies, for today.
Thank you.
It's wonderful.
Be
Much
well.
love.
Much love to you
Thank
too.
you.
Bye for now.